we just thought it would be very, very nice to chat to you and to find out about your Instagram account, and really, why you set up the platform, and what your aims and objectives are for it. I mean, it's been fantastically successful.
Yeah, so I started this account in 2019. I'm just quickly gonna grab my headphone case. I'm so sorry, guys. But you can actually see I'm in the process of a core project here.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Hello.
And this is where I am. But about the account, yes. So I started it in 2019, just mainly because when I came onto Instagram, I always thought that a page like this existed already. Like I could just go and, I typed in Black Aristocrats or something like Black Aristocrats, and like there was no accounts. Yeah. So I was like, this is atrocious. How can we have we have accounts, where we, honor the history of abolitionists, and then maybe some activists, and then some slaves. But then there's no Black aristocrats. So this is not holistic. This is not right. So I was like, fine, I guess I'll make my own platform. Only when I made this platform that I started attracting similar pages that were doing kind of a similar thing. So there's another page, I think, called Diversity in History, and then Georgian Diaspora. But the reason why I called it Black Aristocrat Art is because I wanted it not only to have a ring to it, but to be easy to find. And the way these pages were titled was like, I was never going to search for that and find that page. So I really wanted to make this page as simplified as I could, even though I wouldn't want it to niche down to only Black aristocrats. I made it like an umbrella theme to kind of get the idea of the page. And then when people come into the page and they're like, oh, well, he was not an aristocrat, he was a servant. Yeah, but, like the way this page started up, I was only posting like 18th century or even way back historical figures who were wealthy, well-to-do, or like middle class. And then I kind of changed to just posting like, Africans in Europe, art revolving around if it was the pre-Raphaelites, if it was all these different areas where you see them in art, Africans in art. And it wasn't just the niche expanded beyond aristocrats a little bit, but that's still the theme. That's still the niche, guys. So it hasn't changed. It's just more, it's not like I'm gonna like completely. So for example, some of the art that's in my page, where you see the unnamed figure or the unnamed African holding a grape. Like it would be nice to maybe, because we don't know their names, we never know who they were, how much money they had, whether they were very wealthy or whether they were servants and then they became wealthy in time. But some of them were just models. Yeah. So I was like, I'd put that too.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There was a I don't know if you saw, there was an exhibition, and sadly I didn't get to it, in Amsterdam a couple of years ago, about slavery in the Dutch colonies and in the Netherlands. And there were some people, and there was also another exhibition called Rembrandt, a Black Rembrandt, I think it was called, where they was looking at the black models, the African models mainly, they were, who Rembrandt and some of his colleagues painted.
Oh, that's a good one.
And it was really wonderful. And they did, there's a guy at the University of Amsterdam who did quite a lot of research on, the fact that apparently in Amsterdam at the time that Rembrandt was painting, there was a group of, 500 or 600 people of African descent who were living there, who weren't enslaved. They were, some of them were domestic servants, but they also had some of them were sailors. There were all sorts of different things. And, and then he worked out that some of them were posing for Rembrandt, perfectly of their own free will. So there are all sorts of interesting stories about these people. And I think slowly, historians and art historians are beginning to try and dig out, who these people were. I mean, like that exhibition I'm sure you know about, the Denise Morel did at the Metropolitan, no, it was at the the Musée d'Orsay, I think, in Paris. And then I think it went to a museum in New York about black models, you know, where they started looking and finding their names, Madeleine and
Oh
some of the
yeah.
19th century models. Yeah.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's a really fantastic initiative.
It's really interesting. There's also a painting by Simon Morris, I believe,
Yeah.
painting of a young girl. They found her name, and I put the info on my page because I thought this is so interesting, and I made the hashtag on TikTok, Black Aristocrat Art. So this is how I literally found other people's content who were gonna decide they were gonna make like content based on their like favorite opera singer or their favorite painting from history of a Black European. And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
that has to, and this is like kind of my way of collaborating with people from the outside, because I did say on the guidelines, if you want to like get your content featured, you just put the hashtag so that I can find you. And then I do that a lot. I go through all of the content that's there and I pick out like the really good ones, and I just look at everything. I'm like, okay, this needs to, you know, go and show, because it's just the amount of paintings and art that goes unspoken about compared to the kind of art that is solely about, you know, slave trade, or it's just overwhelming. It's like there's some sort of agenda going on here, because first of all, if we think back to it, let's go back to history. Before the abolition of slavery, weren't all people slaves? Weren't, you know, and like the even the term slave, which came from Slav, and we go as far back as the Ottoman Empire and the Roman Empire owning the British slaves, and then we don't even talk about the millions of British slaves who were, you know, enslaved by North Africa. All this is all during the same colonial period, and in that colonial period, it's like we only highlight the transatlantic slave trade. So if it comes out to like there's some sort of agenda going on, because when we're in school, we will learn about, you know, all kinds of, you know, historical European history. And then when it comes to Africans in Europe, it's mostly about slavery. Like something is not balancing here.
Yeah.
And
No,
that's the way
there are plenty
yeah.
of really interesting images, like, you know, like the one we posted to promote this of Dido Belle. And she's a really interesting character. I mean, I'd love to know more about her. I think there's been a novel, but I don't think anybody's done any really good research on her yet, you know, on her story. But you know, there are other stories. Last week or 10 days ago, we posted one about the King of Haiti, and his wife and daughter, you know, beautiful image. And then there's another one I know in Toronto. I don't know if you've seen that one, at the Art Gallery of Ontario, that a friend of mine, Adam Levine, who's the curator there, has talked a lot about. It's called something like the girl with the orange blossoms in her hair, and it's really beautiful. If you haven't seen it, look it up. And you
I
know,
would love to.
this absolutely beautifully dressed young. My guess is she would be of Caribbean origin, Afro-Caribbean origin, but it's, you know, it's 18th century, and they
Yeah.
don't know who she is. They don't know why it was painted, but you know, clearly she was, you know, painted in this beautiful dress and jewelry and everything. So
Because
yeah,
I've now heard of so many that I can almost like pinpoint. Yeah, I know. Because I have an archive of like over 100 images, which I
that's
haven't
great.
even posted like half of them on my page yet. But I have like over 100 which I found, and you can look at these models or these figures and say like all of them were either, you know, wealthy middle class Black aristocrats, or just, you know, well-to-do, you know, working class servants. And I have not yet posted all of them because there's so many.
Yeah,
But right now I'm going through the details, trying to find information on some where it's completely hard to find the information.
yeah,
There actually is a lot of research done on Dido Belle. Obviously, there was a film about her made in
yeah,
2013.
yeah,
Also, she's in the English Heritage Project, which I was in last year. So the English Heritage Project highlighted 6 African Europeans in history, and I painted one called James Chapel. James Chapel was a servant of Christopher Hatton, who, you know, he owned Kirby Hall, a hall where he and his servants will go, and they would often have events and bring, you know, the Queen. And he wasn't just any old servant, because he actually had the keys to the chambers, so you could tell he was quite an important person inside of the you know, the house. And what made him famous is the fact that he actually, there was like a fire inside Kirby Hall, caused by some explosion, and Christopher Hatton's wife and daughter, I believe, they died in the fire, but James Chapel actually saved Christopher Hatton's daughter from the fire, and he became, you know, a hero. And he was awarded some money, and then apparently he built his own pub, which I was going to see last year, but because of COVID, it was shut down. So I was really sad with that, but I would love to see it.
Yeah.
And he just lived his very life. Like, no, he wasn't a social justice warrior. He wasn't abolitionist. And, you know, there's so many other Europeans, Black Europeans like this, living all across the Europe, but we highlighted 6 specifically living in Britain for the sake of English history, English heritage.
Yeah.
I can highlight some in Russia, in, you know, what we had, Germany, and Dutch history of Black Europeans, the Black Prince of Florentine, Alessandro de Medici.
Medici, yeah.
Medici. I think I say it wrong, because I say Medici, and then people were like, "Oh, on TikTok, oh, you're not getting the accent right." And I always, when I try to pronounce some of these, some of the paintings, when I'm talking about them, even the American ones as well, and I say something like, apparently there's this university, I think it's a university called W.E.B. Du Bois, and I was like Web Du Bois the whole time in the inside. And so I was like, guys, like, please don't roast me. I'm trying my hardest to pronounce everything I can. You get the idea. But,
absolutely. Brilliant. No, we've posted on him, on Alessandro. He's an amazing character. Yeah. Now, one of the questions I was going to ask you is, how do you, because, you know, I know that you're a painter as well, how do you find the time to do the research on all these things? But so you find some of them through context, through what other people have posted, and then you do some more of your own research?
Oh yeah, definitely. I was doing research even from my second, so in 2019. That was my second. That was my final year of uni. Actually, I just started my final year of uni, so it was like around September 2019. I started the page, and because the theme I was doing my art practice on was so similar, I was like, I might as well create this blog to you know, go coincide and do just external research, because my theme was about it was I got models and I dressed them up in 18th century clothing, and then I put like contemporary, so some of them had an AirPod, and I'll paint like Jordans or Nike shoes or some contemporary, and that was kind of my art theme, and I just wanted to explore it. And it's so interesting to hear people's reactions, because everyone has very different reactions, which highlights to me the fact that we are so far removed from the information on my page, on the Black Aristocrat Art page, that people start asking questions like, wow, it's so interesting that you're painting these to rewrite history and to paint Black royalty that never existed in Britain. But like, the kind of reaction people have is like, unfortunately, it's not their fault. It's just that we don't know the history. Truly, we don't know. We don't go far back enough. We don't know about, you know, Septimius Severus, the African Roman emperor who lived in Britain. We think history begins with the transatlantic slave trade and when America started, and so much of our influence is from America, because America has so much influence over what we culture and what we see, what we learn. Like, most of our learning is now e-learning, so we learn a lot from the internet than opposed to my times when we were learning from textbooks and like old documentaries. But even in my times, it was still kind of, there's so much influence. Our influence came from America. So much of American history was just intertwined with British history because the history is intertwined. But at the same time, unfortunately, a lot of our history was just learning about African plantation, which never happened in Britain.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's
African
because
plantation, it happened in the colonies. It did happen in the colonies, it's true. But
yeah,
African plantation and simply, the slave ships, the transatlantic slave trades, a lot of American prose, the color purple, anything to do with abolition and Maya Angelou, all these kind of voices it was engraved into our British history, literature,
yeah,
and that's kind of like shaped our way of
yeah.
thinking in history,
Yeah, yeah, it's
I guess.
interesting. I think American artists are beginning to, well, people like Kahinda Wiley, are really beginning to think
Yeah,
the same way that you are, and to think, actually, let's do some things that are really thought provoking, and say, what if things had been like this, or
yeah,
maybe they were like this, or whatever. So I think people are beginning, and I think it's really interesting that history is now beginning to dig out these stories, which we simply didn't know existed. Um, so yeah, so tell me a little bit about your own painting. So I've seen some of them on your Instagram page, and you talk about something called an oil transfer technique. Is that to do the backgrounds? I mean,
Ooh. Oh
how does
yeah.
that? Yeah.
So I did an oil transfer in my final year of uni. I actually found out that technique by my friend because she'd done it for her painting. But it's a historical technique that was used to enlarge a painting. If either you did the grid method, which was enlarging by, using grids and then transposing it onto the canvas or whatever you were painting on. And then there was oil transferring, which literally what I done is I printed out large. So what I did, I had to trace the image I was going to paint from. So I like to recreate kind of Photoshop manipulation my image before I start painting it, so I know where all the elements are. And because when I start painting this is the envision it's going to look like, but more painterly and not like having all those, Photoshop edges.
Yeah.
So in one of the reels I made, it was just a process of me, doing what traditional artists would do. So I traced I traced the image, the small like an A3 image, and then with the image, I then scanned it into the computer to get a high resolution outline. And then the outline, now I would print that out in a very big, like A1, A0 size kind of piece of paper. Then I'd have to like stick that flat onto the canvas. It's not exactly stuck, but sort of like
Yeah.
masking tape. And then before I do that, let's reverse. On the back of that sheet, I would dry wash oils like raw umber or burnt umber. These two oil colors, because they have they dry quite smoothly and nicely. So when I stick it onto the canvas now and start using a ballpoint pen to trace over the lines, you can see a nice outline
Okay.
for when
Okay.
you're ready to start painting, and that's how you get the
That
proportion.
That's so interesting. That's very like a technique so I'm, an art historian, I think I told you. And so it's like a technique they used in the Middle Ages, basically, which was called pouncing, where they took a tracing of something and then they pricked little holes in it. And then they used black, like carbon. They had a little, like they ground it up into a powder, and they put it in a little gauze thing, and they pounced it onto, so that the black dust went through the little holes onto the canvas. And then it's a bit like dot to dot drawings, and then they just joined up the dots, to make the outlines. And sometimes you can see when you do an infrared of a painting, and you take an infrared image, sometimes you can see those outlines, and you can see the little dots still, where they've made a copy of another painting, for example. So it's really cool that you're still using a version of that technique. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Before that, I was actually doing the enlargement process, which was me just, going putting lines on the painting I was gonna draw. The picture, the photograph, just doing lines and measuring out each line and then enlarging it onto the canvas, which would be bigger, like much bigger. So just simple scale factoring, simple maths.
Brilliant.
G, yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Well, Gloria, I think I have to go now, but it's been so interesting talking to you. And
Yes.
do it again sometime. Next time what's the project that you're working on now that you said you've got a big, exciting project?
Oh yeah, this is a big exciting project because these people found me, I didn't find them, but they're called the World Reimagined. So I'm part of this project, which actually was started by Yinka Shonobare. If you know anything about Yinka Shonobare, his art is a big reflection of, he combines, you know, the African culture and European culture into one in his art, which I put his artwork in my page a lot because it's so inspiring to see this kind of art. And so he's actually the one he's the patron, the beginner of this idea. And there's going to be about 100 different globes going to 100 different cities. They're going to be on display in public. So you can actually go, when you come back to London, you can go and actually see, there's going to be globes in Birmingham, Bristol, Scotland, all these different cities. I believe there may be some in the US. I'll have to double check that. But they're all going to be in public display, and you can just go and like film them, look at it. It's going to be really interesting because he's basing it around the era of, you know, the colonial transatlantic era. But there are different themes that are covered. So different people are assigned to different themes, and the theme I'm assigned to is called Still I Rise, which is about honoring the abolitionist and honoring the just the people who made history so valid and so important. And then there's other themes like Windrush, and then like there's other themes like, you know, the slave ships and all this kind of things. So my theme's kind of, I like this theme because I can definitely explore it and actually incorporate some of the amazing, lovely figures that are on my page into the globe. So like it's like an information kind of globe that people learn from. It comes with a QR code where you can actually learn about so when you come to the globe, you can scan the little QR code on the bottom, and then you have information about it. And they're all going to be varnished in graffiti varnish, graffiti free varnish, double coated. So
they'll be there forever. Yeah. Oh, well, that's
yeah.
Well, this is great. Let's chat to you again in a few months' time when you've done it. Maybe you could be standing in front of your globe, and we could chat. Yeah,
definitely. I will let everyone know there is an exhibition in August. I don't know what exact date yet, but I'll let you know the date so you can actually see 40 globes in Westminster. All for a short period of time they'll be together, and then after that they will be dispersed into different cities. But I will let you know about that, and everyone on here as well. So.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really wonderful. And
thank you.
Touch. Yeah, and keep following you.
Yes.
All right. Bye. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.